The night we first met. It was a warm summer evening, and Lily, 26, sat by the window of a small cafe in the city, lost in her thoughts. She had just finished a long day at work, where she was a junior architect designing buildings she hoped would stand the test of time. Her hair was tied loosely, a few strands falling over her face, and her favorite light blue dress hugged her in all the right places. She loved this cafe. The smell of coffee beans, the soft music, and the cozy atmosphere made it her little escape from the world. But tonight felt different. There was something in the air, something she couldn't quite describe. As she sipped her coffee, she saw Jake enter the cafe. He was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges, and he looked like someone who didn't care much about fitting in. He wore a simple white shirt and jeans, but there was something about the way he moved, confidently, but with a hint of mystery, that caught her attention. Jake looked around the cafe as if searching for something or someone, and then his eyes locked with Lily's. For a moment, everything else faded. The noise, the people, even the music. It all disappeared. There was just the two of them. Lily felt her heart skip a beat, her breath catching in her throat. She quickly looked away, feeling her cheeks flush. But when she glanced back, Jake was still looking at her with a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. He walked over to her table. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, his voice deep and smooth, like a secret she wanted to hear more of. Lily hesitated for a second, but then nodded. "Sure, go ahead." He sat down, his presence filling the space. They talked, and it was easy, like they had known each other forever. They laughed about silly things like the cafe's slow service and shared stories from their lives. Jake told her about his job as a photographer and how he loved capturing the world through his lens, while Lily talked about her passion for architecture. As the evening went on, the tension between them grew. Every accidental touch, his hand brushing hers as he passed the sugar, their knees touching under the table, sent sparks flying. It was like there was a magnet pulling them closer. When the cafe began to close, neither of them wanted the night to end. "Want to go for a walk?" Jake asked, standing up and offering his hand to her. Lily didn't hesitate this time. She took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, and they walked out into the cool night. The city was quiet, with only the soft hum of cars in the distance. They walked side by side, talking about everything and nothing at all. At one point, Jake stopped, gently tugging her hand and pulling her closer. Lily looked up at him, her heart racing. The way he looked at her, it was like she was the only person in the world. "You're beautiful, you know that?" he whispered, his voice low, almost a whisper as he leaned in closer. Lily's breath hitched. She could feel the heat between them, the closeness of his body against hers. She wanted to close the gap between them, to feel his lips on hers. And then it happened. Jake leaned down, his lips brushing softly against hers, testing the waters. It was gentle at first, like he was savoring the moment, but then the kiss deepened. His hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. They kissed under the moonlight, slow and passionate, like they had all the time in the world. When they finally pulled away, breathless, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he said, his voice husky, his breath warm against her skin. Lily smiled, her heart racing. "Me too." The night didn't end there. They found a small park nearby and sat on the grass, talking until the early hours of the morning. Their bodies were close, their hands intertwined. They talked about their dreams, their fears, their past relationships, and their hopes for the future. By the time the sun began to rise, Lily felt like she had known Jake for a lifetime. And as they walked back to her apartment, she knew this was just the beginning of something special. But as perfect as the night was, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that this love might not be as easy as it seemed. There was something about Jake, something he wasn't telling her. And deep down, she feared that whatever it was, it could tear them apart before they even had a chance. Lily's heart raced as she stared at the message on her phone. The words felt like a cold splash of water, cutting through the warmth of the moment. You don't know who you're with, Lily. Be careful. He's hiding something. The anxiety bubbled inside her. Was Jake really hiding something? She glanced back at him. He looked so peaceful, his dark hair tousled, lips slightly parted as he breathed softly. The sight of him made her heart swell. She didn't want to believe he could be anything but the man who had shown her so much kindness and affection. But the message lingered in her mind, clawing at her thoughts. Lily decided to put her phone down, reminding herself that she had to trust Jake. They had built something special over the last few weeks, hadn't they? As if sensing her turmoil, Jake stirred awake, stretching lazily. He turned to her, a sleepy smile breaking across his face. "Morning, beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning," she replied, her heart fluttering despite the doubts creeping in. Jake propped himself up on one elbow, his eyes sparkling. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lily hesitated, her mind racing. Should she tell him about the message? Would it ruin the beautiful moment they were having? "Oh, it's nothing," she finally said, forcing a smile. "Just didn't sleep well." He studied her for a moment, his expression turning serious. "You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" "I know," she said softly, feeling a wave of warmth at his concern. "It's just one of those days." Jake nodded, his gaze lingering on her. "All right, but remember, I'm here for you, no matter what." They spent the morning together, sharing breakfast, laughing over pancakes, and enjoying the sound of rain tapping against the window. But in the back of Lily's mind, the message hung like a dark cloud. After breakfast, Jake suggested they watch a movie. They curled up on the couch, his arm around her head resting against his shoulder as they watched a romantic comedy. Lily tried to focus on the screen, but her thoughts drifted back to the message. Midway through the movie, she decided she couldn't keep it to herself any longer. "Jake," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Yeah?" he replied, looking down at her, his brow furrowed in concern. "I got a weird message this morning," she admitted, "from an unknown number." Jake's expression shifted, curiosity mixed with concern. "What did it say?" She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "It said that I should be careful because you're hiding something." Silence filled the room. Jake's expression darkened, and Lily's heart sank at the sudden shift in the atmosphere. "Who sent it?" he asked, his voice steady but tense. "I don't know. I just got it this morning." She looked into his eyes, searching for answers. "Do you have something to tell me?" For a moment, Jake looked away, his jaw tightening. The weight of his silence was crushing. She could see the inner conflict in his eyes. "There are things in my past that I haven't shared with you," he finally admitted, his voice low. Her heart raced. "What things, Jake?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Before I became a photographer, I was in a different world, one that I'm not proud of. I got involved with people I shouldn't have, made choices I regret. I've been trying to leave that behind, to be a better man." Lily felt a rush of conflicting emotions, relief that he was finally opening up, but also fear. "Are you in any danger now?" "No, not anymore. But my past can sometimes catch up with me," he said, his eyes serious. "I didn't want to scare you, Lily. That's why I didn't tell you." Lily took a moment to process everything. "I appreciate you telling me this, but you should have trusted me with the truth. I want to know you. All of you." Jake nodded, his gaze softening. "I'm sorry, I wanted to protect you." She took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I can handle it." I just wish you would let me in." The tension between them eased a little, but Lily could still feel a lingering doubt. They returned to watching the movie, but the light-hearted dialogue didn't fill the air the same way. Instead, it felt heavy with unspoken words. After the movie, they decided to go for a walk to clear their heads. Lily's heart pounded as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the beach. The warmth of the day was fading, and with it, the carefree atmosphere. Jake's expression was strained, his jaw tight, and Lily sensed that the encounter with Mark had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. "Jake, please," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You can't just brush this off. I need to understand what's going on. Who is Mark, really? And what does he want from you?" Jake took a deep breath, his shoulders stiff, his eyes fixed on the waves crashing against the shore, as if the ocean held answers he couldn't find in himself.
On the night of March 8, 2014, Flight MH370 of Malaysian Airlines was performing a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. This is a familiar route for airlines. On board were 239 passengers and crew members. The aircraft model, Boeing 777, was one of the most modern and reliable airplanes at that time. The plane took off at 12:41 local time. The crew was led by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid. Both were experienced professionals with a good professional reputation. The plane ascended to an altitude of 10 kilometers, where the main part of the flight was to take place. The Boeing was flying according to the plan. The crew contacted ground controllers and confirmed the route and flight status. 40 minutes after takeoff, the last voice contact with the captain of the aircraft was established. He bid farewell to Malaysian controllers as the plane was gradually entering Vietnam's airspace. Shortly after this message, Flight MH370 disappeared from radar screens. Air traffic controllers in Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, were unable to re-establish communication. The aircraft did not report any malfunctions. After several hours later, when the aircraft did not land at the scheduled time in Beijing, it became clear that something had happened to the plane. Search and rescue operations began, but over several days, no signs of the aircraft were found. The world was in shock, watching the spread of news about the missing airplane. Thus began one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. A few days later, several countries joined the search for the plane. It became one of the most extensive search operations in history. Initial efforts were focused on the South China Sea between Vietnam and Malaysia, where the last communication with the plane occurred. Gradually, the search expanded to cover a large section of the Indian Ocean, where the plane might have headed. A British satellite company established that after MH370 disappeared from radar, it made a sharp turn and continued flying for several hours toward the southern part of the Indian Ocean. However, the Indian Ocean is too vast, and it is impossible to thoroughly investigate even a quarter of its area. Despite the involvement of submarines, ships, helicopters, and advanced technologies in the search, no traces of the plane were found. If it had crashed, some debris should have been discovered. However, it felt as if MH370 had disappeared without a trace. Gradually, various theories emerged to explain the event. Experts speculated about possible technical malfunctions, such as rapid decompression or a power failure, which could have incapacitated the aircraft and left the crew and passengers unconscious. Another theory suggested intentional actions. Investigators carefully examined the backgrounds of Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid. There was a theory that one of the pilots deliberately directed the aircraft to its doom due to personal problems or mental health issues. Another theory proposed the possibility of the plane being hijacked by third parties, suggesting it was seized and taken to a secret location. Sometime later, debris from MH370 was discovered on beaches along the western part of the Indian Ocean, where ocean currents had carried it. The debris confirmed that the aircraft had crashed. However, the exact location and reasons for the crash remained a mystery. After several years of searching and investigating the MH370 incident, Malaysian authorities presented an official report. However, the document left most questions about the event unanswered. The report stated that the cause of the disappearance could not be definitively established. No evidence supported any particular theory. Although parts of the aircraft were found, they provided no answers about what had happened. The findings only indirectly confirmed the approximate region where the aircraft likely crashed, the southern part of the Indian Ocean. However, major parts of the wreckage, including the black boxes containing critical flight data, remained missing. The investigation involved not only official authorities but also many aviation enthusiasts worldwide. However, none of the theories about the cause of the disaster found sufficient evidence. Technical malfunctions did not explain why the aircraft continued flying for several hours after disappearing from radar. The pilots' biographies revealed nothing that could serve as a motive for a deliberate crash. The possibility of hijacking also seemed unlikely, as no group claimed responsibility for the incident. The result of the incident was an increase in aviation security measures, particularly improvements in aircraft tracking systems. However, 10 years after the disaster, the fate of Flight MH370 remains a mystery. This is far from the only enigma in aviation history. In this video, I will share a few more mysterious stories of disappearing aircraft.
Jake stepped closer, his fists clenched. Don't talk to her. This is between us. Mark held up his hands in mock surrender. Fine, have it your way, but I'll be around, Jake. You can count on that. With one last pointed look at Lily, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Lily exhaled shakily, her legs weak beneath her. Jake, what are we going to do? Jake pulled her into his arms, his grip firm but comforting. We'll figure it out. I promise I won't let him hurt you. But he's not just going to go away, she whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. I know, Jake admitted. That's why I need to put an end to this. For good. As they made their way back to the beach house, Lily's mind swirled with questions and fears. The weight of Jake's past was heavier than she had imagined, and now it was pressing down on both of them. But as she glanced at him, his jaw set with determination, she realized she wasn't alone in this. They would face it together, no matter what lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the beach, Lily and Jake sat in silence. The tension from Mark's unexpected visit lingered in the air. Jake took a deep breath, trying to shake off the encounter. Let's not let him ruin our day, he said, forcing a smile. You're right, Lily replied, trying to match his optimism. We were having such a good time. Jake turned to her, his eyes sparkling with mischief. How about we have a little contest? Let's see who can build the best sandcastle. Loser has to do something embarrassing. Lily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What kind of punishment are we talking about? Jake smirked. The loser has to wear a ridiculous hat and sing I'm a Little Teapot at the next family gathering. Deal, she said, her competitive spirit ignited. They jumped up, gathering sand and shells as they raced to build their creations. Jake's castle was elaborate, complete with a moat and little flags, while Lily sculpted a whimsical tower with a tiny door and windows. Laughter filled the air as they worked, washing away the remnants of tension. When they stepped back to admire their work, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yours looks like a royal castle, and mine looks like a fairy tale gone wrong, Lily exclaimed, struggling to catch her breath. Feigning shock, Jake bowed dramatically. Fairy tale or not, I'm still the king of this beach. Lily joined in, spinning playfully. But as they reveled in their silly banter, Jake suddenly turned serious. Lily, he began, his tone soft. About that message. She held up a hand. Before you say anything, let's put Mark behind us. He doesn't define us or our future. Jake nodded, gratitude softening his features. You're right. I want our future to be bright and full of laughter. Speaking of the future, Lily said, her eyes sparkling mischievously, how many kids do you want? Jake laughed, surprised by the shift in conversation. I think I could handle a couple of little troublemakers. What about you? Definitely, she said with a grin. But only if they inherit your sense of humor and my love for baking. Jake chuckled. Oh, our kitchen will be pure chaos. Can you imagine our kids covered in flour and frosting? And we'd have to promise to take embarrassing photos, Lily added, laughing. Remember when you thought it was cool to wear icing on your face? Jake threw his head back, laughing heartily. They'd probably disown us. Lily leaned closer, her heart swelling. But honestly, I can't wait for all the family adventures we'll have, like finding the perfect house together. Jake's eyes lit up at the thought. With a big backyard for the kids to run around and a tree house. A tree house with a slide, swings, and a secret club inside, Lily added, her imagination running wild. And a garden, Jake said. We could teach the kids how to plant veggies. Imagine their faces when they pull up their first carrot. Lily giggled. It's going to be perfect, a chaotic, love-filled home. Jake pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. No matter what happens, I promise to always choose love and laughter over fear. Together, Lily echoed, her voice steady with conviction. As they packed up their things hand in hand, they walked away from the beach. The challenges of Jake's past lingered, but their shared dreams for the future shone brighter. They had turned uncertainty into a promise of love, laughter, and the beautiful life they would build together.